see
Okay.
if we get the email. Nope. And we're live. I'm seeing an ad. And I'm getting an email. Welcome, welcome, one and all. I also feel like in the future I need to keep adding words to the name of whatever it is that we're doing. So like now we've got the Season 2 preview pack plus Infernal Relics Retro-Futurist listening/viewing party.
Eventually, it'll just be like so much text that you can't even see the background anymore.
The Sentinels of the Multiverse, the video game from Handelabra Games and Greater Than Games. It's the Season 2 preview pack plus Infernal Relics Retro-Futurist listening/viewing party. Here on Sentinels Live. Yes, Lou Dolphin, Time Cataclysm is not Infernal Relics. I was actually just saying this to Jean-Marc before we went live, that the last, I don't know if it was the last listening party or the one before that, we didn't have anything playing underneath the sort of in-between talking parts, and I didn't really like that. I like it when there's more of Jean-Marc's music playing. So I decided to use this because we're going back in time while also looking forward in time. So it felt thematic to be using the Time Cataclysm. Because it's always now somewhere.
Yeah, it's an always relevant song because everything is in there.
Exactly. We may have to make you, when everything is all said and done, we may have to make you make a new time, like a second Time Cataclysm with all the other environments that were not included in Time Cataclysm.
If that is a part of my job, I will do it.
I just feel like it would be fun to listen to. I don't know if it would be fun to make, but I feel like knowing you would probably derive some fun from it.
Oh yeah. I feel like it would kind of complete the whole thing.
And the idea of you trying to have to mix the Enclave of the Endlings in with almost anything else puts a big smile on my face.
It can be done.
Yes, indeed. All right, so these are... usually in the evenings we give people some time to get in, but I feel like in the afternoon ones, it's like you're either here or you're not, because, a lot of people are working or whatever. So I think we'll just dive right on in. And so I'll welcome everyone to, again, as I said, the big long name, the Infernal Relics Season Pass Preview Pack Retro-Futurist Listening/Viewing Party. As many of you know, we began this idea of listening parties back with Shattered Timelines. It was actually... This one was the one that you first asked me, like, hey, is this a thing we could maybe do? And we just didn't have time to sort of throw it all together, right? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was kind of like, I think it was the Monday before a Tuesday stream that I was like, oh, I thought of this thing, but it would have been too much work to put together.
Yeah. So we started with Shattered Timelines, then we expanded it a bit with Wrath of the Cosmos into a listening/viewing party, so that it was actually starting to produce it a little bit, so you could see the artwork while listening to the music. Mainly because we realized that, one of the ideas behind a listening party is you get to hear the music clean, as opposed to like in the game where there's sound effects and other kinds of things happening. And we realized, too, that the artwork is something you don't typically get to see sort of unmolested. It's usually got cards over top of it, or it's cropped so that it fits in the game in the right way. So this is a way for you to get to see all the artwork in a way that you don't normally get to see when you're playing the game as well. So then, back in this past May, we were kickstarting Season 2, as part of the $75,000 Squish goal, patent pending, you all helped us unlock retro listening parties for all the music from before the Shattered Timelines. That, of course, includes not only the expansions, but the core game. So we still need to do the core game, Rook City, now Infernal Relics, and we've already done the mini-pack. So we did begin making good on this promise back in May with the mini-pack listening party, which you can always view on our YouTube channel, along with all the other older parties and, of course, Sentinels Live. Thanks, Russ. Sentinels Live episodes. And today we will be covering Infernal Relics, but... we will also be giving you your first listen to the new music from Season 2. And if you are a backer, we've already let you in on the secret, but we are now happy to publicly announce that Season 2 launch day is 1 week from right now. Friday, September 16th. Season 2 will be moving out of the Kickstarter / pre-sales phase and available to purchase as Season Pass 2 on all stores and platforms. So what do you get when you purchase, starting next Friday? Why, the Season Pass preview pack, of course. Setback from Vengeance, Temple of Xulong from Villains of the Multiverse, and Chokepoint from Mini Pack 4 comprise the special preview pack that is going to be kicking off Season Pass 2. This special preview pack was a stretch goal on the Kickstarter and is only available with a full purchase of Season Pass 2. So what that means is anybody who backed to get Season Pass 2, whether it's on Google Play or Steam, will get this when they get their key. You'll get your key next Friday, you'll put it in, and boom, you're starting with your preview pack, and then everything else will just get added automatically in the same way it did with Season 1. But what that also means is that, at least for the time being, the preview pack will not be available as a $2 or $3 standalone thing. It's a special part of Season 2. So if you want it, you got to get a Season Pass preview, or you got to get a Season Pass for Season 2. All right, so today you will get to hear 2 new pieces of music from this pack, Chokepoint's villain theme and the environment music from the Temple of Xulong. Hang on, I just got to get something prepped here. Bloop, bloop. Right. But before we get to that, we, of course, need to shatter the timelines, into a time cataclysm and head back to late spring of 2015. And to get you in the mood, we're actually going to start this listening / viewing party with the Infernal Relics story trailer that you guys probably haven't watched in 8 or 9 months. So we're going to get right to that, and we'll be back in a moment.
Centuries ago, Ra, the mighty god of the sun, ruled over the most advanced of peoples. Egypt was the jewel of the world. But in time, a new pantheon of 9 gods arose, seeking to take from Ra what was rightfully his. The combined power of the Ennead was too much for even the god of the sun himself. Centuries passed, and both Ra and the Ennead were lost to history as mere mythology. But those with ill will in their hearts will always feel the draw of the relics of the Ennead. They will become a new Ennead, reborn to make their mark on the world once more. But one man, true of heart, has been drawn to the resting place of the staff of Ra. If he proves strong enough, he will take up the mantle, and with the heroes of this age, this new Ra will bring about an end to the Ennead's new reign. Will you save the world, or will the Ennead gain utter control once again? The truth will be known with the reappearance of the Infernal Relics.
Okay, so obviously it's not still coming soon. It's out, but that was the teaser trailer that we released way back when for Infernal Relics. And there's some question who does the voiceover. That is a gentleman from here in Cleveland named Dan Zulo, Voice Galaxy Productions. And he has actually, we've worked with him for years, actually. He did a bunch of the voices for our first game way back in the day, Uncle Slam, as well as he's one of our sort of perennial voices. I believe he did Chrono Ranger, he does Baron Blade, and obviously he did his real thing is sort of voiceover work and voice talent in general. So he does a lot of like Sunday, 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 those kinds of radio ads and stuff too. So, all right, so you all know me, of course. I'm Jeremy, President and CEO of Handelabra Games, as well as the damage-dealing Sentinels Live co-host. And I'm joined today by the man that everybody actually wants to hear talk, because I'm going to be done soon. And that, of course, is our resident maestro, Jean-Marc Giffen. Say hi.
你好吗?
So before we go any further real quick, I just want to say that some of you know that Handelabra is not the only thing that Jean-Marc does. So why don't you take a minute and tell us about your other recent project?
All right. So just in case you guys are interested, I recently had a track on a chiptune compilation album, and it was a piece of music that I started composing a while ago and finished recently, and I was really happy with it. I feel like it kind of, to be artsy about it, I feel like it represents me as a person more so than any other piece of music I've done so far. So I'm just really excited to have that out there and have it on an album, and I'll post a link to it in the chat here, and I guess we can probably provide it in the description if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah, sure. You listen in Ketchup Rocket, make sure you include that link when we post this to YouTube. All right, so, and then fortunately for her, but unfortunately for us, our resident environmentalist, Jennifer, is on a much-deserved vacation this week, so she will not be joining us, but she has left a few notes for us to discuss when we are done listening to the environments. And as to the format, for those that are unfamiliar, basically, Jean-Marc will introduce a song, then we'll listen to it and chat about it a bit, and I think that's about enough out of me. So here we are, Infernal Relics. Take it away, Jean-Marc.
Okay. So, the first theme we're going to look at today is the theme for a character called Akash'bhah. Akash'bhah has been around as long as the world itself. She manifests herself in any size and as any natural element, and feeds off of the ending of life. She thrives on bringing chaos and discord. Our heroes have managed to slow her down, but have yet to defeat her. This is Akash'bhah's theme now.
So that was Akash'bhah, the spirit of chaos.
Yeah, I wanted to use very sort of natural, tribalistic, kind of earthy elements in this one. So, that means like a lot of drums and things like that. But I also used a lot of like actual sounds from nature, like branches being broken, animals scurrying away, the earth moving underneath, like things like that. And I kind of like wanted the music to describe Akash'bhah growing out of the earth and becoming stronger and bigger as she did. So I tried to represent this in the music by having it grow like quiet to loud, and from like lower pitches to higher pitches, and then like fewer instruments in the beginning to more towards the end. But of course, like it could only go so far because it had to loop. as all the villain themes do. So, it gets to a certain point, it climaxes, and then rests there, and then loops back to the beginning again. When choosing the nature sounds, I really wanted to use the sounds of giant trees just like snapping in half and all that, but those kinds of sounds are hard to find, and my sound design attempts weren't really working out with that. So, but overall, I think I was able to kind of get what I was going for with it there. So.
Yeah, this is what. So one thing you guys will actually notice, I think, in a lot of the music from this expansion pack is that being Infernal Relics and being mystical and being kind of crazy, there are some things that strayed away from your very typical sort of musicality in terms of okay, we've got a beat and we've got a melody and we've got a harmony. There's a lot of interesting new elements that Jean-Marc was playing with in this expansion, and I think a lot of that really comes across. Starting with Akash'bhah, because it's got some very we were talking about this earlier, some non-rhythmic things that are kind of like, oh wait, is that rhythm? Wait, I'm trying to get caught up on the rhythm. Oh, okay, hang on, whatever. And that, of course, will come to a head in a little bit when we get to the realm of Discord, which is essentially non-musical in a lot of ways. All right, so did I accidentally turn myself too far down? How are the sound levels coming out there, guys? John was telling me that I was coming in not very loud and that Jean-Marc was way too loud, and I'm trying to do the levels here, and I feel like I'm not seeing myself making enough noise.
I just turned myself down during the last piece there.
All right. Well, if anybody has a hard time hearing either one of us or both of us or anything, please let us know. All right, so what's up next?
All right, next up we have the Ennead. A bit of an intro to them. So a team of archaeological grave robbers were investigating the pyramids from which Dr. Washington became Ra, the god of the sun. In the process, they ran into ancient guardian mummies, and they had to barricade themselves in a sealed chamber to get away from them. While they were there, they discovered 9 sarcophagi of powerful Egyptian deities, each which had an artifact of power in its hand. And when the team took these artifacts, they were transformed into the fabled Ennead. So they now possess vast power and knowledge, but also ancient memories of hatred. So let's listen to the Ennead music now.
All right, that was the Ennead. And it's very fitting because I'm actually just been rewatching through Stargate. I think I mentioned this on the stream as well. And of course, Stargate has a lot of very Egyptian mythology happening. And so a couple of those are really bad Goa'ulds, in addition to being in the Ennead in Sentinels.
Yeah, so like the Tomb of Anubis, which we will hear soon, this one, for obvious reasons, needed to have a distinctly Egyptian feel to it. But unlike the Tomb of Anubis, it also had to have a feeling of like power and imminent dread of that power. So originally, I only wanted to use 9 instruments, and each of them being like sounding authentically like they're from that region of the world. But I didn't actually have enough to work with. So once I finished that, I added some other instruments to just kind of fill it all out and make it sound as a complete piece, because it was sounding too thin without others, unfortunately. And so this piece just sort of like, most of the time I don't construct music this way, where I just start off with one thing and then layer something else on top of that, and then layer something else on top of that. But for this one, I kind of liked it because, it just sort of like starts off with like one of them appearing and then another one joining until all 9 of them are represented. And then, kind of like Akash'bhah, it like comes to sort of a climatic note, and then kind of restarts from there.
Yeah, and I noticed that a number of the pieces don't necessarily feel like they have a real clear looping moment, because they're just sort of like interesting. They clearly loop well. I'm not saying they don't loop well. I'm saying that it's like this one feels a lot more like it has a beginning, middle, and an end in a lot of ways, in ways that a lot of the other songs don't necessarily.
Right. Yeah, and for most of the villain themes, I usually kind of have it sort of melody in sections. So like a loop feels sort of natural. But yeah, like for some of them, like this one, or for a lot of the environment music, it definitely comes to it like a conclusion, and it's like, okay, here we go again.
That's true, but some of your environments, they come to a conclusion like 2 minutes before the end, and then there's, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean about, like, in most of the environments, you wouldn't necessarily be able to pick out, oh, that's clearly the end of the song. They just sort of fade and move and sort of, rise and fall and ebb and flow in a very solid looping manner, which I like a lot. Cool. And I know that sometimes you have to come up with end points for songs when you hadn't really thought about it, because for like, and this actually is a good example, it doesn't loop twice and then stop. It loops twice and then begins a third loop and then fades out, in the way that a song, on the radio sometimes will, because doesn't have a clear, we should just end it on this downbeat kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth in the soundtracks in terms of whether it has like a definite ending or whether it just fades out. But I usually just go with whatever happens to work best for the piece.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about our first environment today.
All right. So as I mentioned about a minute ago, the first environment we have up is the Tomb of Anubis. So Anubis is the Lord of Judgment. He guards the gates of the underworld, judging those who pass from this life to the next. He only manifests himself in this world when something upsets the balances. What has caused this imbalance? The bearers of the ancient Egyptian power. He draws the heroes and villains into his tomb to battle and to be judged. His tomb is filled with traps, trials, but also treasure. What fate will they encounter at the Tomb of Anubis? Let's listen to it now.
All right, yes. So that was the Tomb of Anubis. And Jean-Marc will tell you a little bit about the music for a minute, but since this is one of the environments, and some people were talking about it in the chat already, being able to see the environments clearly is something you don't actually get to do very often in the game. And so it's one of the reasons we like doing these listening parties, and it's another reason why we made the wallpapers for the Kickstarter, was because we wanted people to be able to, have this art and look at it and really see it in all its glory. And some sharp-eyed Sentinels out there might have noticed that there was some art in that last one that you haven't seen before. And the reason for that is because Jennifer's actually going back into all the old environments and making some new, what we call new cameras, new views, new shots of the environment. Because a lot of times she actually builds more than we need, and then we would pare it down to just the few that we need to make sure we have enough to have on screen at any given time. So like in the game up until this point, the most we could ever show on screen at once was, I believe, 7, because you could have up to 5 heroes, 1 environment, and 1 villain. That is, of course, changing soon. With the advent of Vengeance, and after that, Villains of the Multiverse, there can be up to 5 villains, 5 heroes, and an environment. And then there'll be even more once Oblivion comes around, potentially, depending on how that all shakes out. So she's going in and making more cameras so that we don't have to double any of them up. And so you'll notice there's some new stuff in this, as well as in the Realm of Discord, which are pretty cool looking. And also, the other note that Jen wanted me to mention is that you saw it right up at the front of the stream, which was the daylight shot of the pyramid and the sort of crumbled tomb, which she made special for that trailer, because we knew we were going to do it, and then it was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we see it in all its glory back in the days of the Tomb of the Anubis, but let's have it in the future when the new Ra is getting ready to take up his mantle and stuff. And so that was where we sort of switched it all around, changed some of the modeling, and made it daytime, and we got a whole different look at that same piece of the environment. So very, very cool. All right, so take it away, Jean-Marc.
Yeah, so as you can hear in that piece, there was a lot of overlap in the instrumentation between the Ennead theme song and the Tomb of Anubis. But this one sort of starts off with a more subdued and somber tone, obviously. And so when I first started designing this track, I had imagined a voice sort of crying out in the desert, warning the heroes not to enter the tomb. And then, of course, they enter it anyway. But this was sort of before, I had anything down. I was just like, there's got to just be this voice that just kind of, belts it out. And so, we managed to find sort of the perfect thing, which just happened to be on sale at the time. And so far, that's the only thing we've used it for, because it's the only thing it fit. But there's actually quite a bit of really cool stuff in there, and you just kind of select different phrases and stuff and then put them together. And I had to manipulate a little bit to fit in, but that's sort of the thing I look forward to when this environment comes on. So as they enter it, they sort of encounter the sounds of a dusty tomb and all the secrets beneath it. And so in all the environment music in the game, up until we did this one, we would start off with something more upbeat, sort of the active section. And then in the second half, it would become more subdued. And that was a very intentional choice from us to kind of keep the levels from being overwhelming. When you're playing for half an hour, whatever, you don't want to just have something blasting at you the whole time. So, but with this one, we wanted to reflect the idea you're kind of going deeper and deeper into the tomb. And so more and more would go on the further you went into the piece. So this one progresses from a more subdued tone and then climbs along as you go along. And so I tried to stick pretty closely to an Egyptian sounding scale and sense of harmony. But obviously that's been a bit Hollywoodized over time, and so people have a slightly different expectation than what it actually is. But I was fine to, go along with that, to give it sort of that desert pyramid Egyptian feel. And so towards the end of the piece is sort of like the showdown between Anubis and the heroes, and there's that style of melody that's meant to kind of encapsulate that sense of like, Indiana Jones style adventure.
All right, so yeah, that was the Tomb of Anubis. I'm told by John that I'm still not loud enough, so I'm going to try to lean even closer to my microphone without popping my peas. So let us know again if you can't hear me. I also am going to be turning the background music down a little bit. All right, so that was our first environment, and I believe we're just about done with our Egyptian theme, and now we're going to move firmly into the mystical. So who's next?
All right, next up we have Gloom Weaver. So Gloom Weaver is a demon that lives between dimensions and is revered by many cults, voodoo cults. He feeds on the despair of mankind and grants those who worship him dark magic in return for their sacrifices. Among these are the terrible relics that, when brought together, break the veil that separates Gloom Weaver from the desperate souls of our world. Our heroes have banded together to stop him, but their strife and anger in the meantime only feeds his power. Let's listen to Gloom Weaver's theme now.
So creepy.
So within Gloom Weaver's deck, there are a few different types of cards, but two that always show up are the cultists and the zombies. And so mechanically in the game, as the cultists...
I'm sorry, Anchor, I just said I want this song played at my divorce. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No comment. So as the cultists are destroyed mechanically in the game, they often come back as zombies. And so during this piece, I represented these aspects. So first there's like this chanting, and that's all the cultists singing. And then but there's more and more sounds of like the undead, like zombies and stuff, as the piece goes along. And so, but even with all of that, I deliberately use these pauses to just ring out this like sort of really misshapen bell, and like that, just leave that to hang and kind of let that dread sink in. It's like, they're not in a rush, they're just gonna keep making progress and just like even when you think they're gone, they just keep coming back.
Yeah, see, and this is exactly what I was talking about earlier about some of the things that are clearly musical but not quite as rhythmic, or differently rhythmic from what people might be used to, because this one in particular, it's like it starts to get going and then it just sort of stops and hangs, and it makes you feel the dread, and then it comes back and then it just hangs. I really, really like, I mean, it creates the sense of dread in a way that just seeing the pictures and whatever, I mean, it really does. It's the same thing we've talked about many times about the music and what we wanted to do with really bringing the multiverse to life. I think this is a perfect example of it, because if you heard this music in a darkened alley, you would not want to see what's coming down after you. But of course, Gloom Weaver is regular. This was regular Gloom Weaver, but Gloom Weaver has a variant, which is even more grotesque.
So after Jack Donovan, otherwise known as Spite, died, Gloom Weaver offered him a chance to return and wreak havoc as his right-hand demon. Gloom Weaver seeks to return to Earth by entering in a new form, one of actual flesh. Flesh is created from the bodies of Spite's victims. If Spite fails in his attempt to procure enough, Gloom Weaver will overtake Jack Donovan himself and enter through undead possession. Either way, this is the most terrifying and disturbing form of Gloom Weaver we've seen yet. Let's listen to that now.
Yeah, so this is so gross. And I will say, one of the things I don't think Jean-Marc mentioned in his intro is that when you flip Skinwalker Gloomweaver over, his flip side is called the Rotting God side. And I feel like that phrase, more than anything else, is embodied in this piece of music. It really does feel like a rotting god with all that entails.
Yeah. This piece grosses me out so much. Except for when I made it, I can't stand listening to it. Because, whereas I said, that chip tune I mentioned at the beginning, I connect with really well, this is pretty much, the opposite of that music. But the goal is to make it represent, the character. At least that's my approach to it, is, you're not just making stuff you like, you're making stuff that brings the, the world alive. So I used a lot of fleshy sounds for this one. I think it's like dogs eating food, or I don't know. And so I brought the cultists down, so rather than singing like before, they're kind of humming it, which gives it sort of a darker tone. Instead of the big bell, just the big bell, it has the cries of somebody dying or something, something awful is
Yeah.
going on there. Like it's just it's so sick.
So gross. Yeah, so we can move on anytime. So next
right.
up, we have our second environment of the day.
All right. So if that one grossed you out, this one might weird you out a bit. The realm of Discord is the space between worlds, where chaos and entropy are ever shifting. Solid forms are created, then destroyed, and reformed as something completely different. The heroes are drawn here to battle against great evils that use the realm of Discord to breach the barriers between worlds. In this piece, as a little Easter egg, each member of Handelabra, at the time, have their voices in there, except for me. But I'm in other ones, so that's okay. So you can, because most people have heard this in the game so far, I thought it'd be kind of neat to let you know ahead of time who's where. So you can hear John starting at about 40 seconds in. You can hear Jennifer at about 1 minute 35. And you can hear Jeremy at about 3 minutes and 30. So be sure to listen for them. Let's give that a listen now.
We are back from the realm of Discord.
Yeah, so as you could hear there was nothing concrete for very long in this piece. It has no tonal center, there's no rhythm, there's no consistent sound set. Just uses the sound of anything and twists it until it becomes a new sound. So a lot of the original sounds were various places, either online or I recorded them myself. And you can hear the sounds of like bubbles, wolves, sonars, engines, violins, static, birds, synths, squeaky toys, bats, glass, organs, drones, pulses, and bowls. And in addition, the voices that we mentioned are mixed in there. So just kind of like put those together, decided where they go, what kind of turns into what. And with enough effects and layerings and stuff, it makes for a very strange piece of music.
Indeed, it does. So on the visual side, I know that Jennifer actually had a lot of fun with this environment. It actually took her a little bit longer than some of the other ones because, as I think we've discussed on previous streams, the way that the sort of starting point for us in any environment is, all right, what can we go out and get? You know, like with Megalopolis, we got a city pack, and then we built it into Megalopolis. And then with, with the Tomb of Anubis, there was like a bunch of Egyptian and sort of ancient ruins kind of things. With this, there really isn't anything that's really obvious. So she played around with modeling her own stuff. She played around with starting from some of those things like, stone staircases and hands and like mashing them together and all kinds of other just weird stuff. And as Jen says in the notes here, the landscape at the very end there with the big suns in the background is one of her favorite images that she's created, and I agree. To answer Russ, I see that John answered as well, but yes, there were new backgrounds in here as well, and there will be new ones for every environment, all the way back to the core game, coming in Vengeance. There was one other thing I was going to say about this environment, but I can't remember what it was now. Yeah. But yeah, it's really, it's definitely, one of the things I noticed listening to it in headphones completely silently is the stereo separation where things are sort of swirling around you and going back and forth. That I think I've noticed it before, but I've never really listened for it before outside of the context of like a listening party. So that was really cool, and I enjoyed it a lot. All right, what do we got next?
All right, so next up. Vézelay has many of the same characteristics as Fnatic: wings, power, and a sword. He told her that she was, in fact, his creation, not a beloved child of God. Fnatic was shaken by this encounter and left to meditate on these claims. While she was gone, he brought about his terror and destruction, summoning demons to do his bidding. The heroes banded together to stop this dark angel, the one known to them as Apostate. Let's listen to it now. So that was Apostate. So if you look at the name of this track on the soundtrack, you'll see that it's called Black Winged Angel. And Adam and Christopher and I did this as a direct reference to the song One Winged Angel from Final Fantasy VII. As you could hear, sort of bringing in sort of the classical church music, but kind of twisted style to it. So like church organs, choirs, and intense strings were all in scope to represent the holy war between the supernatural forces of good and evil. Also, this is the first piece to have lyrics in it. So in case anyone was wondering, it has a Latin choir, not a real one, just a virtual instrument, singing, and translated what they're singing is, "We are diamonds that shine without fire." And that's a direct reference to the flavor text on one of Apostate's cards. But yeah, I really enjoyed kind of doing this kind of music because I've heard a lot of real church music, and so kind of putting it in a different setting was kind of an interesting thing to do.
Very cool. Yeah, I really like Apostate's music, just because I also like that idea of, it comes from a place of almost gospel, but it's clearly not your mama's gospel.
Yeah.
It's very clearly dark and evil, and it's twisting something that you assume under other contexts would not be dark and evil. So, and I like it a lot.
Yeah. Now, if Fnatic had a theme song, maybe, it would probably be like, it would probably use a similar soundscape, but use it very differently. So,
all right. So that about does it for our Infernal Relics portion of the evening, or the afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. As we mentioned, this was part of the Retro-Futurist viewing/listening party. The retro part was because we didn't do these before. The next retro listening party will be for Rook City. We're going forwards to backwards. So we're doing Infernal Relics, then we're going to do Rook City, and we're going to cap it off with the core game, which will probably be a little bit longer because there's more music in the core game. But since we're finishing up with Infernal Relics, it's time to move on to the future part, which is the Season 2 preview pack. As everybody knows, we've got 3 new decks coming in this. We've got Setback is the hero, Chokepoint is the villain, and the environment is the Temple of Xulong. And so which of those are we going to listen to first?
all right, so first let's take a look at Chokepoint. So Evelyn Moore speaks to machines, and when she does, they create a metallic cocoon around her. Her parents, scared of their own child, signed her over to the Ironclad Project. She grew up and joined their army of powerful soldiers, but her temper made her hard to work with. She kept absorbing metal around her, and one day she absorbed a tank. Fearing this new monster that had surrounded her and the collapse of an entire tank in front of their eyes, the army began attacking her and she ran away. One day she melded with energy crystals brought to Earth by Deadline. She now has knowledge and power, and Chokepoint was born. She absorbs the tech of the heroes and uses it against them. She is now on a quest to destroy the world and rebuild it in her own image. Let's listen to Chokepoint's theme now.
right, so there's your first piece of new music from Season 2, Chokepoint.
Yeah. So, originally when I asked Grading Games about what kind of music they were looking for with Chokepoint, they said they wanted some EDM, electronic dance music, and specifically something industrial. So I created the first pass at the idea, but kind of I think what I think of when I think of EDM ended up being like more upbeat and dancey than they actually intended. So like the sounds were right for it, but it just wasn't kind of the style that they were thinking. So from there, I actually started over, but I slowed it down quite a bit and added some more variety to the low end, and applied some effects to vocals to make them sound like the voices she might be hearing when she's communicating with all the metal and such. And in case you're wondering about those voices, the singer for Chokepoint is the same singer as for the matriarch in Rook City. That's Jennifer Clausen from Greater Than Games.
Very cool. Yeah, so Chokepoint, it's as you're remembering the story about like, oh, we made this thing that was like way too upbeat, and then we ended up with this. I kind of agreed with that up front too, but it was an equally cool piece of music. So I am hoping, and I think we're going to find a way to use it or something like it at some point in the future. So don't worry, guys. You're not going to never get to hear where he was going with that first pass at Chokepoint. It just might come up in a slightly different way. So before we move on to Temple of Xulong, I did want to mention something, which is that as Jean-Marc, as his process moves through the music, like he'll send us chunks of songs and we'll listen to them and we'll sort of see, how's this coming along? And then we'll pass them off to Greater Than Games. We'll get feedback and it'll go back and forth. But so somehow through the process, as well as me being away for a week or two, I had never actually heard Chokepoint or the Temple of Xulong all the way through before I started putting them together for the listening party. And so when I started the Temple of Xulong, I actually got like distracted by the music and just sort of stopped working and just listened to it. Because it's the first time I'd ever actually heard it all the way through. At first I was just sort of like work a day, like, oh, I'm going to edit this together, whatever, blah, blah. But I think, and I might be misremembering this, but I think this may be the most beautiful piece of music that Jean-Marc has created yet. I don't want to make him blush, but it is pretty amazing, to the point where I was like literally like almost sort of taken out of myself and sat and had to listen to it while it was playing. So I hope that I haven't made you blush too much, Jean-Marc, and I hope I haven't oversold it to the chat, but I think this is possibly my favorite piece of music you've made. So with that, go ahead and tell us about the Temple of Xulong.
All right. I'll let you guys decide. That's right. So hidden in the Himalayas, the Temple of Xulong is a mystical fortress filled with many magic secrets hidden from the world. It is full of apprentices, wards, and assassins who are in deep debt to Xulong, as he has the power to cheat death. The ancient purveyor of life and death holds the keys to certain doors which should remain closed. Let's listen to the Temple of Xulong now.
Yeah, so what do you guys think out in chat land? Was I right or was I right? I actually, during most of these songs, I've been chatting with Jean-Marc, just sort of like talking business, and this one I was totally silent because I just wanted to listen to it again. It really is. It honestly, it's like a true Jean-Marc joint, which, if you've been listening to his music up until now, you know that it's got a lot of like some of his signature bits that I've started to pick up on over the last couple of years as he's been making more music for Sentinels and stuff. So yeah, it was really, I love this.
Well, thank you. Actually, it's kind of funny because when I'm working on music, I hear it so much and in like so many rough forms along the way that it gets to the point where I can't even tell like what it sounds like to anyone else. Like I can't tell if it's good or bad. I can just tell that it is, and this needs to be changed or fixed, or this is the wrong level. But it's like I have no clue what it sounds like just from a listener's perspective until I listen to it like a month or two later.
Sure.
So I'm glad that you say, like, I've gotten for the people who have heard it, it's been getting a good response, and I'm glad, because I was just like, I don't even know if this is any good or not. Like, I really don't. Like, that's just the truth. So yeah, for this one, Greater Than Games asked for a flavor that's mostly Chinese, but also has some influences of Japanese music. And so I decided that, like the style and the instruments and stuff would all be Chinese, such as like the, and I might be pronouncing these wrong, Ershu, Dizzy, and Yang Queen. But it also uses like many pieces of Japanese percussion. Notably the taiko. There's others that I wanted to get in there, but unfortunately they were like super expensive to get the virtual instruments for them, and I didn't have any of the real instruments, unfortunately. So I also had to work with on how to make it sound like make it have a mystical and dark tone, because if you listen to most ancient Chinese music, it's just like, it's so beautiful, but like in a peaceful kind of way, like, Zen garden kind of thing. And, I couldn't just go with that, because it has to have sort of an air of mystery to it as well. So I tried out some different combinations of ideas until I found something that I think balanced them well. And so, but like, even so, Chinese instruments are so gorgeous that even in the darkest of themes, it would still come out sounding like really rich and uplifting to a certain point. But the whole deck had sort of this dark beauty around it, and so I thought it was like sort of an appropriate middle ground between the two. So it was a challenge to fit it all together, but I still had lots of fun and got to try out lots of new ideas and instruments and stuff, which is something I always enjoy doing, even though it slows down the process of it getting done. Thankfully, I'm in a situation where I have enough time to do that. And so also, like Tomb of Anubis, it starts out more subdued and sparse because it's from the outside, and then as you kind of enter deeper into it, it grows as it goes along, and then kind of has that sort of climactic theme at the end, which it's kind of funny. I didn't have any choir in there at all, but just the way the instruments were blending and stuff, it sounded like there was a choir. And so I was like, well, if it's going to sound like there's a little bit of a choir, I may as well just put one in. So right at the very end, there's like a bit of a choir underneath to kind of support it even more. Yeah.
So notes from Jen on this. The main thing she said is that she was excited to get into this environment because it is, in fact, the first environment from Season 2. And that sort of finding the right way to sort of capture the magical and mysterious spirit of this environment was really her biggest challenge when she was building it. And, this one actually had one of the more straightforward sort of processes. So if you had watched it behind the scenes of how we built this, it really was kind of sort of emblematic of how we usually do environments, which is, she went to the asset store, tried to find some sort of stock Japanese and Chinese buildings, started to throw them together. We put them in front of Greater Than Games, said, okay, well, what do you think of this? And they would say, well, we like this part, we don't like this part. And so she would change, maybe change some of the furniture. One of the specific ones is like the third or fourth image that you saw had a screen with some bamboo in front of it. And her initial take on that was actually the screen had a bamboo print on it. And they looked at that and they said, we love the bamboo right there, but it should be real bamboo. Like, they wouldn't have printed anything. It wouldn't be like, that looks too modern. So let's take the exact same look of it, but make that an actual 3D object in front of the screen and not like a painting or a print on the screen. And I thought that was, that is very, very much how the process tends to work. Is we just sort of go back and forth until we really find that we've captured, their original intent with Adam's 2D artwork, and then just we've recreated it. All right, so I think that's about it. Unfortunately, that's all the new music we have for you today. Wah, wah.
That's it for now.
That's it for now. But actually, what we did last time, which people seemed to like, was we played the final environment again as sort of an extended outro. So we'll do that again here, especially because it is so beautiful, so why not listen to it again? And as my group P pointed out, there won't be a season pass preview pack soundtrack. This music is going to be on the free soundtrack that's going out to all Kickstarter backers, I believe, more than likely. We're still working some of that out, but and that soundtrack will not be out until at the very earliest Vengeance, but most likely until Villains has shipped. And you'll understand why that is a little bit later, but it's going to be a while. So we'll play it again so you can hear it again, and then obviously you can always go watch this on YouTube after it goes up,
Or hear it in the game.
Or hear it in the game, of course. You can always go to the multiverse and just sit on the multiverse menu to listen to the environment and villain musics as well. So in wrapping up, I would just want to remind everybody, if you came in late, 1 week from today, September 16th, is Season 2 launch day. If you were a backer, expect to hear from us in the next week with instructions on how you're going to be able to get your keys. If you are a mobile backer, we sort of let it slide without making too much hoopla, but we managed to get to the 1,000 backer limit, which means that the discount on mobile will last for the full first 48 hours on sale, which is a whole extra day that sales of Season Pass 2 on mobile will count towards stretch goals. So if you have anyone in your life who was not aware of the Kickstarter but you think might be interested in Sentinels, get them interested in the next week and have them buy Season 2 so we get even more music from Jean-Marc, because the next stretch goal is, of course, the Sounds of Victory, which will have Jean-Marc make heroic theme songs for back all the way from, I believe, the core game and... what did we say? All of Season 1, I believe, is what that stretch goal was for. And then if you guys can do really well, then we will get to the story mode at $150,000 raised. All right. Any closing words, Jean-Marc?
Just really happy to see so many people come out, because, with a mid-afternoon stream, at least here, you never know. And so it looks like we have 42 in the chat right now. So thanks for hosting this, Jeremy, and look forward to seeing you guys again on Sentinels Live.
Right on. All right. Thank you for the plug. We do Sentinels Live every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So to watch us play the game and not just listen to the game, you can just tune in or check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Handelabra, to see all of our back episodes as well as previous listening parties. And we're going to close it out with Temple of Xulong playthrough one more time, and then we're just going to close it. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. We will see you soon.